Good morning. Thank you. Bow with me. Gracious and good Heavenly Father, again we come asking you to forgive us of our sins, to ask you to lead us and guide us in these next few days. Give us wisdom to do things that are right. Forgive us when we do wrong. Let us remember that we're down here representing all the people of the state of Georgia, and that both sides of this House and Senate need to open up their minds a little bit. Lead and guide us. Forgive us. Give us wisdom, character, and compassion. I ask these things in my Savior's name. Amen. To the wall. I can't stand playing games with you people. And sometimes I think that's what y'all think this is. I will not promise you that you will get any bills on the calendar. And if I hear SB1 one more time, you won't get it. Ms. Tankersley.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Today I stand before you to ask for House Resolution 743. It's simply to create a House Study Committee on annexation, de-annexation, and incorporation, city incorporations. There's a clear need to review our current annexation, de-annexation, and incorporation laws and procedures and consider ways of addressing negative impacts and ensuring that the process is clear, open, and equitable, and in the best interest of all the citizens of Georgia.
Any questions of Ms. Tankersley? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Tanner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got H.R. 744 under modified open. I believe it's the fourth one down, first page. This will be a study committee dealing with drones. We've had a lot of piecemeal legislation on drones introduced over the last several years. Appreciate the help from the Speaker's office and Chairman Powell in trying to come up with a plan to be able to address this as a global policy moving forward, and that's what this study committee would attempt to do, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions, Mr. Tanner? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and ladies and gentlemen of the committee. I appreciate your service and being here today. And I have before you, and I think it's obvious you don't see me here much, and I certainly won't be back again no time soon. I have before you here substitute Senate Bill 76. It's a simple motorcycle and bicycle bill. And I wanted just to, for shortness of time here, I know you're busy, just kind of relate to exactly what it does. If you turn to the first page of this bill, it's LC 410504S. It just simply says to amend the Georgia annotated relating to motor vehicles so as to provide for definition to provide for the safe operation of motorcycles or bicycles through an inoperative control signal, to require drivers of motor vehicles to stop at crosswalks with pedestrians activated rectangular rapid flash beacons, to make it unlawful to activate such devices when there is no intent to cross the roadway, to remove the provisions regarding the height of handlebars, et cetera, et cetera. What this bill simply does is allows a motorcycle or bicyclist to pull up to these four-way traffic control intersections. They are controlled by a mechanism under the drive, and they will not activate because of the lack of weight of the motorcycle, of the iron content, et cetera, et cetera. And it would just simply allow them to, after watching and looking and listening, to activate that as same as they would a regular four-way stop sign that didn't have a traffic light. Look, they've got to see at least 500 foot and be safe and pull out and go on their way. The addition to this, and I thought was such a great amendment, is put on it in your committee of public safety, the lights, the strobe lights on crosswalks, and it added to the bill. I'm very appreciative of that. It makes the walking of crosswalks a lot safer for our pedestrians, and so if this is a vehicle that can do that, it's worth its time. Thank you very much. If there's any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Ms. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, my understanding is this bill has been further refined from a version we've seen in previous years so that it satisfied some of the concerns that there were previously. Is that true?
Yes, ma'am. It's been a thing ongoing, but I think that the sensibilities of everybody has decided that it's good, and I just hope y'all will decide it's good. But I appreciate anything you do or say, and thank you very much. Any further questions?
Yes, hold on, Mr. Fleming. Anyways, Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To my good friend, who is an honorary over here, the honorary South Georgia guy.
Yes, sir.
Just one quick question, though. The part that was added in committee, I think that was a bill that we earlier had here in the House. Is that not correct? Are you aware of that?
Do what? I didn't
the
quite.
The part that was added in public safety in the House to that bill, wasn't that a bill we currently had in the House?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure. So that's the same language?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
It was improved over there, by the way. Thank you. Is there anything else? Thank you.
Mr. Powell. Well,
Yes, sir. Just a question. Is it not true that, we've been looking at this bill for motorcyclists, and these are for the motorcycles that pull up on these strips and they don't have the weight to change it. And in a lot of cases, we've looked at over the years about taking a right on red and such as that, but we've found now that there's situations that they come down the interstate ramps with the red lights and they don't have anywhere to go. And the language we put in here basically said that they have to maintain the burden of proof that they're doing all things possible, but still the liability would be on them if they did pull out in front of someone.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Thank you.
No more questions, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I bring before you H.R. 724, which is the second bill listed under modified open rule. It's a resolution to create a House study committee on cybersecurity and privacy, looking at a couple things. Number one, the threat of cybersecurity and how our government agencies are responding to that. Number two is to look at the consumer protection laws that we have, make sure some of our identity and our private information gets stolen. What are some of the remedies, and are we addressing that from a policy level? And lastly is the infrastructure that we have of a lot of companies who are in this space to see what economic development opportunities that they are to further study that issue. So the resolution is to create a study committee, set for 5 days, and the members are appointed by the Speaker. Be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Pack, I was under the impression that we either have one of these going on right now or that there's another proposal for this. Is this duplicative of the effort that's already going on?
I believe there's another resolution that was actually introduced, not a study committee that's going on right now, but that resolution has stalled.
Final question. So I was under the impression that there was the governor's office or someone was already working on a task force or a group doing this currently. That's not the case?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee members. It's an honor to be able to present to you guys for the first time. I come today with SB 108. This is an insurance department bill. This is also an NAIC model bill, which this would require large insurance carriers, and by large we mean an insurance carrier that writes $500 million or more in insurance premium, to dig a little deeper into their balance sheets. This requires them to look deeper at their investments and look deeper into the risks that they insure to make sure they can meet the obligations to their policyholders. It would require them to submit an annual report on these findings. These reports would contain very sensitive information to them, and they would be confidential, and they would be held in confidence with the Insurance Commissioner's Office. As SB 108, I would be thankful for your favorable consideration.
Wait a second. Mr. Weldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could pose a question to the chairman of the committee. I believe the House has a bill that does a lot of the same thing that the senators advised about this bill. I was just wondering if we know the status of this bill in the Senate.
No, I don't.
Thank you, sir. Could the senator address that issue? I think we have a House bill that's
It is not the
similar.
same bill. It is not the same bill. I know there is a self-reporting bill in the Senate at this point. If I'm not mistaken, that might be the one that I'm carrying, and it may have passed out of Insurance Committee. I could be confused though, because I'm not familiar with the exact bill you speak of. Okay. However, it is not the same bill. This is a department bill here that would allow them to fall in good favor with the NAIC.
Okay. Thank you.
No more questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bethel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, on page 2, still in the modified structured section, the third from the top, is Senate Bill 135. This is a bill I'm carrying at the request of the clerks of Superior Court. It deals with records retention, disclosure, and backup. It also now has provisions that are important to members of the House and Senate alike, dealing with the removal of the sunset provision for the certified process servers, and that was welcomed, a welcome amendment, and I will yield for questions.
No questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Y'all have to be nice to Mr. Bethel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you this morning. I'd like to request Senate Bill 82. It's on the second page, the second bill under structured rule. This bill corrects a flaw in the distribution process for the taxes collected on big trucks. In 2013, we went to an IRP process, and the state previously was collecting approximately $10 million in taxes on these trucks. Now we're collecting approximately $7 million additional dollars, and some of the counties that were collecting the ad valorem taxes where the trucking companies are located were going to be unfairly penalized. So we worked with ACCG, GMA, and the Department of Revenue on this bill, which would transition from the ad valorem tax to the performance-based model over a 5-year period. What it would do in this first year is set a benchmark. Every county in the state would receive, to begin with, since there's an additional $7 million, every county would receive the money that they received last year. So no one would be penalized, and then the $7 million additional would be taken and it would be distributed according to the performance-based model. And then at the end of 5 years, all the money would be distributed according to the performance-based model.
Any questions of Mr. Wilkinson? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Stone.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I have 2 bills on the calendar today. On page 1, second from the bottom under modified structure, is Senate Bill 111. This simply allows continuing care retirement communities to provide home health care services through existing regulations dealing with licensing and all aspects of regulation. On the second page, second from the top, is SB 134. This is a bill we talked about yesterday, dealing with putting further restrictions on speed traps to close an existing loophole in the law. I'll be happy to answer questions about either bill.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kennedy.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to the members of the committee. I bring to you Senate Bill 128, which is on page 1 under the modified open rule, 3 from the bottom of the modified open rule section. This is a bill that I'm carrying for the State Bar. It proposes revisions to the Georgia Business Corporations Code dealing with officers, directors, and certain changes regarding other provisions to make our code more consistent with Chapter 8 of the Model Business Code. The revisions are the product of the Georgia Bar Association corporate sections work. They're annual, although it's been a few years since these revisions have been done, but they're proposed to make sure that our code section, corporate code section, is current and also tracks the Model Act. These are recommended by the State Bar. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Is this your first time here?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it is.
I'm not normally as disagreeable as I am this morning. You come back, you hear?
Yes, sir. I'll be glad to.
Mr. Hufstetler.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got two bills. The very bottom one on page 1 under modified structure 114. Those that were here yesterday, I went over this one where it's a cleanup of nurse protocol for community service boards. I'll be glad to answer your questions on that if I need to. The other bill, the second one under modified structure, Senate Bill 64. This is from the governor's task force on child support, the second bill that we've put out of that committee that I've been on for 2.5 long years now. And I guess you could refer to it as maybe the I am not the father, well you are now bill. We've had an acknowledgement of paternity that form that's had a lot of fraud in it and has caused a lot of problems. And this Office of Administrative Courts, the Governor's Task Force, has changed the language, made it a more formalized process, and this is supported by the Council of Juvenile Court Judges, the Family Law Section of the State Bar, and the Georgia Court-appointed Special Advocates. Chairman Weldon did make some changes in his committee on this, and we're fine with the changes. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Mr. Weldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Hufstetler, isn't it true that this bill requires DNA testing examination in order to positively identify the father, so that we don't have the that's the one, oh no, not that one, but this one, maybe not that one, but this one, basically shopping around for the father?
That might be a good way to put it. It's a much cleaner process.
Thank you. And that's done before we legitimate or require the child support obligation.
That's a good point, Chairman Weldon.
No more questions. Thank you.
Thank
you. Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. It's great to be with you today. First bill I wanted to call to your attention was Senate Bill 63. It's on page 2 under the structured rule. It's a beer that's going to help our small businesses in Georgia that are engaged in distilling alcohol and brewing beer. Appreciate Chairman Powell and the other members of the House who helped us get to where we are in this process. Happy to answer any questions on that. And then on the front page is Senate Bill 203 under the modified open rule is the World War I Centennial Commission. As we come up to our 100th year anniversary of World War I, we're putting together a commission that will work with the federal commission that's already in place to make sure that Georgia's history is included in this great celebration of 100 years since that significant event.
Any questions of Mr. Hill on either one? No questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Black, you miss us yet?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Did you hear me?
No, sir, I didn't.
Yeah, well, that's the way he was in the house. He couldn't.
He said, do you miss us yet?
Well, it comes with time, you know. Have to start wearing these little bugs on here, and you don't pick up everything. So my apologies to you and the committee. And I will say this.
Wait a minute.
I will say this. It is a different world over there.
I'm over into it. You ain't gonna let me say that. My question was, do you miss us yet?
Well, I miss yes.
Okay, go ahead. Long as you miss us.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, I bring to you under modified open House Bill 175, which is a departmental bill. It's a little bit, but it's not simple because it involves animals, and anytime you involve animals, it gets complicated. But this is requires a health certificate, a certificate of veterinary inspection on the major species that are used in economic significance in agriculture, equine, cattle, horses, pigs, sheep and goats, this type of stuff, and also birds. It exempts poultry that's under the National Poultry Health Policy, and this is also provides that the Commission of Agriculture has authority by rule to address other species that pose a significant health hazard to the animals of this state. Thank you, sir. Any questions?
I certainly hope not. Thank you so much. I'm going to put that on and make sure Weldon carries it for you, so we won't understand a thing about that bill. Ms. Orrock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and we certainly are enjoying Senator Black in the Senate, let me just say. I'm here on Senate Bill 109, Modified Structured Rule, and this is the bill that clarifies and addresses the legal issues around end-of-life medical treatment in support of honoring patient preferences about medical treatment. And we appreciate the questions of the committee when I was before you yesterday. I would just call to your attention that some 10 groups have worked on this bill very, very carefully. We had 3 full health committee meetings in the Senate. It passed unanimously from the Senate. It passed unanimously from your Health and Human Services Committee, and I appreciate the Chairman Cooper's leadership on that. But Medical Association of Georgia, the Hospital Association, the Nursing Home Association, the Palliative Care and Hospice Association, the Georgia Trial Lawyers, the Alzheimer's Association. I could keep going. We've worked with the Archdiocese as the bill moved through the process, as well as Georgia Right to Life. And it's been carefully crafted. You know, when you change a bill like this, you've got to run back through about half a dozen of those organizations to see if they're still with you. So would appreciate your favorable consideration, and I will stop and see if I can entertain any questions for the committee or the chair.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And that amendment that the chair lady and I have discussed is one that we think is very workable to having this go forward. Thank you.
Mr. Dugan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. This is on modified structure, page 2, top of the page, Senate Bill 131. We talked at some length yesterday. It's a bill I'm carrying for DBHDD. It's just a cleanup bill. Subject to your questions, if there are no questions, I respectfully ask that you select this bill.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Williams. And y'all, he has put another one in the pot. He's working hard.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I present to you SB 95. It's on modified open rule, halfway down. This bill allows real estate brokers to place money they have in a trust or escrow accounts into an account at a financial institution as long as that account is federally insured.
You mentioned the magic word there at the end on all these new accounts that you want to put the money in. Are all of those federally insured?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Go back over here to we recommitted one of your bills yesterday, 160.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Tell us what happened.
We went back to committee yesterday. We met. We made an amendment, kind of just a technical amendment to make sure that it was accomplishing what we wanted to accomplish, and that is that law enforcement officers, whenever they come upon underage drinkers, that their first line of defense is to issue a citation first, then to assess the situation, and if need be, to then arrest. Right now there's a lot of arresting going on, and police officers feel like they have to for various reasons, and this is something that is being supported by the prosecuting attorney as well as several police chiefs.
And Mr. Weldon.
To the Senator, your Senate Bill 95,
yes,
this doesn't give any new powers to realtors. This just says they have to keep the money in a financially insured institution that's insured by the federal government, right?
Correct, yes, sir. Right now the rule is they have to put it in a checking account at a bank. Mm-hmm. So we're just opening it up to any account as long as it's federally insured at a financial institution.
Good bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
When you put it in another account, you put it in a checking account. Does the checking account earn interest?
That would be up to the bank, but yes, it could possibly earn interest.
And these other accounts, are they interest accounts?
They could be, yes, sir.
Who gets the interest?
That's agreed to upon the parties that the money is held in trust for. It could either go to the party who gave the money for trust, or it could go to the broker. It's based upon the contract that they signed.
Okay, thank you. No more questions.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman of committees. First off, I would like to report that yesterday the Senate Finance Committee took up about 10 of your bills out of 25, and we've got the remainder on our agenda today. In the Finance Committee, moving right along, Chairman Powell and Majority Leader and I have spoken in the last 24 hours extensively on some of those bills. I'd like to bring to you Senate Bill 69. It's on the front page. It's the modified open rule. It's fairly straightforward. It's related to the Georgia Defense Force. The Defense Force reports directly to our governor. They're called up. These individuals are volunteers. They're called up for usually 2 to 3 days in the state of Georgia. They're not deployed overseas, while the governor is in the process of calling up the National Guard. And right now their employment rights are not protected, so some of them risk their employment by being called up for a couple of days at a time. And this bill simply protects them from being fired while they're doing the service on behalf of the people of the state. And with that, I'd be obviously willing to take any questions, and Chairman Yates will be carrying the legislation.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Gooch.
Good morning. I'm not here to give a committee update, but I'm here to ask for Senate Bill number 4. Senate Bill number 4 deals with the Atlanta Beltline. It's a good economic development bill. We passed this bill out of the House and the Senate last year. It got hooked up in a conference committee, and the last hours of the night we failed to get it back over in time to get it printed on your desk. There's been a lot of work done on this in the House Transportation Committee. There was an amendment made dealing with one of your representatives asking for an MPO to be created in his district, and I ask your consideration to put it on the House floor today. Please, sir.
Mr. Willard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, I had conversations with, there's been a change that limits this to what they call the martyr counties, which is Fulton and DeKalb only. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And the question, I guess, concern being raised was, is this putting a greater burden on the local municipalities in these areas as to the cost of relocation of utilities on road projects?
Yes, sir. It won't deal with any of the roads in state or county or city roads, but there was a lot of discussion, and Chairman Hamilton actually got an amendment passed in Transportation Committee that some private utility companies favored, but some of the local governments did not favor. So that's an issue.
What has it changed then in that area?
Let me see if I can find that in the bill. I don't see Chairman Hamilton in the room, but